I see you. Chapter 4, Burdens. Oh dear, how hard it does seem to take up our packs and go on, sighed Meg the morning after the party, for, now the holidays were over, the week of merrymaking did not fit her for going on easily with tasks she never liked. I wish it was Christmas or New Year's all the time. Wouldn't it be fun? Answered Joe, yawning dismally. We shouldn't enjoy ourselves half so much as we do now, but it does seem so nice to have little suppers and bouquets, and go to parties and drive home and read and rest and not work. It's like other people, you know, and I always envy girls who do such things. I'm so fond of luxury, said Meg, trying to decide which of two shabby gowns was the least shabby. Well, we can't have it, so don't let us grumble, but shoulder our bundles and trudge along as cheerfully as Marmee does. I'm sure Aunt March is a regular old man of the sea to me, but I suppose when I've learned to carry her without complaint, she will tumble off, or get so light that I shan't mind her. This idea tickled Joe's fancy and put her in good spirits, but Meg didn't brighten, for her burden consisting of 4 spoiled children seemed heavier than ever. She had not heart enough even to make herself pretty as usual by putting on a blue neck ribbon and dressing her hair in the most becoming way. Where's the use of looking nice when no one sees me but those cross midgets, and no one cares whether I'm pretty or not? She muttered, shutting her drawer with a jerk. I shall have to toil and moil all my days with only little bits of fun now and then, and get old and ugly and sour because I'm poor and can't enjoy my life as the other girls do. It's a shame. So Meg went down wearing an injured look and wasn't at all agreeable at breakfast time. Everyone seemed rather out of sorts and inclining croak. Beth had a headache and lay on the sofa trying to comfort herself with a cat and 3 kittens. Amy was fretting because her lessons were not learned and she couldn't find her rubbers. Joe would whistle and make a great racket getting ready. Mrs. March was very busy trying to finish a letter, which must go at once, and Hannah had the grumps for being up late didn't suit her. There never was such a cross family, cried Joe, losing her temper when she had upset an inkstand, broken both boot-lacings, and sat down upon her hat. You're the crossest person in it, returned Amy, washing out the sum that was all wrong with the tears that had fallen out on her slate. Beth, if you don't keep this horrid cats down cellar, I'll have them drowned, exclaimed Meg angrily as she tried to get rid of the kitten, which had scrambled up her back and stuck like a burr just out of reach. Joe laughed. Meg scolded, Beth implored, and Amy wailed because she couldn't remember how much 9 times 12 was.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Girls, do be quiet 1 minute. I must get this off by the early mail, and you drive me distracted with your worry, cried Mrs. March, crossing out the 3rd spoiled sentence in her letter. There was a momentary lull broken by Hannah, who stalked in, laid 2 hot turnovers on the table, and stalked out again. These turnovers were an institution, and girls called them muffs, for they had no others and found the hot pies very comforting to their hands on cold mornings. Hannah never forgot to make them, no matter how busy or grumpy she might be, for the walk was long and bleak. The poor things got no other lunch and were seldom home before 2. Cuddle your cats and get over your headache, Bethy. Goodbye, Marmee. We're a set of rascals this morning, but we'll come home regular angels. Now then, Meg. And Joe tramped away, feeling that the pilgrims were not setting out as they ought to do. They always looked back before turning the corner, for their mother was always at the window to nod and smile and wave her hand to them. Somehow it seemed as if they couldn't have got through the day without that, for whatever their mood might be, the last glimpse of that motherly face was sure to affect them like sunshine. If Marmee shook her fist instead of kissing her hand to us, it would serve us right, for more ungrateful wretches than we are were never seen, cried Joe, taking a remorseful satisfaction in the snowy walk and bitter wind. Don't use such dreadful expressions, replied Meg from the depths of the veil in which she had shrouded herself like a nun seeking the world. I like good strong words that mean something, replied Joe, catching her hat as it took a leap off her head, preparatory to flying away altogether. Call yourself any name you like, but I am neither a rascal nor a rich, and I don't choose to be called so. You're a blighted being and decidedly crossed today because you can't sit in the lap of luxury all the time. Poor dear, just wait till I make my fortune and you shall revel in carriages, and ice cream, and high-heeled slippers, and posies, and red-headed boys to dance with. How ridiculous you are, Joe. But Meg laughed at the nonsense and felt better in spite of herself. Lucky for you I am, for I put on crushed airs and try to be dismal. As you do, we should be in a nice state. Thank goodness I can always find something funny to keep me up. Don't croak anymore, but come home jolly, there's a dear. Joe gave her sister an encouraging pat on the shoulder as they parted for the day, each going a different way, each hugging her little warm turnover, and each trying to be cheerful in spite of wintry weather, hard work, and the unsatisfied desires of pleasure and love and youth. When Mr. March lost his property in trying to help his unfortunate friend, the two oldest girls begged to be allowed to do something toward their own support at least. Believing that they could not begin too early to cultivate energy, industry, and independence, their parents consented, and both fell to work with the hearty goodwill which, in spite of all obstacles, should succeed at last. Margaret found a place as nursery governess and felt rich with her small salary. As she said, she was fond of luxury, and her chief trouble was poverty. She found it harder to bear than the others because she could remember a time when home was beautiful, life full of ease and pleasure, and want of any kind unknown. She tried not to be nervous or discontented, but it was very natural that the young girl should long for the pretty things, gay friends, accomplishments, and a happy life. At the King's, she daily saw all she wanted, for the children and older sisters were just out, and Meg caught frequent glimpses of dainty ball dresses and bouquets, heard lively gossip about theaters, concerts, sleighing parties, and merrymakings of all kinds, and saw money lavishing on trifles which would have been so precious to her. Poor Meg seldom complained, but a sense of injustice made her feel bitter towards everyone sometimes, for she had not yet learned to know how rich she was in the blessing which can make life happy. Joe happened to suit Aunt March, who was lame and needed an active person to wait upon her. The childless old lady had offered to adopt one of the girls when the troubles came, and was much offended because her offer was declined. Other friends told the Marchers that they had lost all chance of being remembered in the rich old lady's will, but the unworldly Marchers only said, "We can't give up our girls for a dozen fortunes. Rich or poor, we'll keep her together and be happy in one another." The old lady wouldn't speak to them for a time, but happening to meet Joe at a friend's, something in her comical face and blunt manner struck the old lady's fancy, and she proposed to take her for a companion. This did not suit Joe at all, but she accepted the place since nothing better appeared, and to everyone's surprise got on remarkably well with her irascible relative. There was an occasional tempest, and once Joe marched home declaring she couldn't bear it longer, but Aunt March always cleared up quickly and sent for her to come back again in such urgency that she could not refuse, for in her heart she rather liked the peppery old lady. I suspect that the real attraction was a large library of fine books, which was left to dust and spiders since Uncle March died. Joe remembered the kind old gentleman who used to let her build railroads and bridges with his big dictionaries, tell her stories about queer pictures in her Latin books, and buy her cards of gingerbread whenever he met her in the street. The dim, dusty room with the busts staring down with the tall bookcases, the cozy chairs, the globes, and best of all the wilderness of books in which she could wander where she liked, made the library a region of bliss for her. The moment Aunt March took her nap or was busy with company, Joe hurried to the quiet place, and curling herself up in the easy chair, devoured poetry, romance, history, travels, and pictures like a regular bookworm. But like all happiness, it did not last long, for as sure as she had just reached the heart of the story, the sweetest verse of a song, or the most perilous adventure of a traveler, a shrill voice called Josie Fine, and she had to leave her paradise to wind yarn, wash the poodle, or read Belcham's essays by the hour together. Joe's ambition was to do something very splendid. What it was, she had no idea as yet, but left it for time to tell her, and meanwhile found her greatest affliction in the fact that she couldn't read, run, and ride as much as she liked. A quick temper, sharp tongue, and restless spirit were always getting her into scrapes, and her life was a series of ups and downs which were both comic and pathetic. But the training she received at Aunt March's was just what she needed, and the thought that she was doing something to support herself made her happy in spite of the perpetual Josephine.
Could use some help, but you do best.
Beth was too bashful to go to school. It had been tried, but she suffered so much that it was given up. And she did her lessons at home with her father. Even when he went away and her mother was called to her devote her skill and energy to soldiers, aid societies, Beth went faithfully on by herself and did the best she could. She was a housewifely little creature and helped Hannah keep home neat and comfortable for the workers, never thinking of any reward but to be loved. Long, quiet days she spent not lonely nor idle, for her little world was people with imaginary friends, and she was by nature a busy bee. There were 6 dolls to be taken up and dressed every morning, for Beth was a child still and loved her pets as well as ever. Not one whole or handsome one among them. All were outcasts, till Beth took them in. For when her sisters outgrew these idols, they passed to her because Amy would have nothing old or ugly. Beth cherished them all the more tenderly for that very reason, and set up a hospital to infirm dolls. No pins were ever struck into the cotton veils, no harsh words or plows were ever given them, no neglect ever saddened the heart of the most impulsive, but all were fed and clothed, nursed and caressed with an affection which never failed. One forlorn fragment of dollinity had belonged to Joe, and having led a tempestuous life, was left a wreck in the rag bag, from which dreary poorhouse it was rescued by Beth and taken to her refuge. Having no top to its head, she tied on a neat little cap, and as both arms and legs were gone, she hid these deficiencies by folding it in a blanket and devoting her best bed to the chronic invalid. If any had known the care lavished on that dolly, I think it would have touched their hearts, even while they laughed. She rotted bits of bouquets. She read to it, took it out to breathe fresh air hidden under her coat. She sang it lullabies and never went to bed out kissing its dirty face and whispering tenderly, "I hope you have a good night, my poor dear." Beth had her troubles as well as her others, and not being an angel but a very human little girl, she often wept a little weep, as Joe said, because she couldn't take music lessons at that fine piano. She loved music so dearly, tried so hard to learn, and practiced away so patiently at the jingling old instrument that it did not seem as if someone, not to him, Aunt March, ought to help her. Nobody did, however, and nobody saw Beth wipe the tears off the yellow keys that wouldn't keep in tune when she was all alone. She sang like a little lark about her work, never was too tired to play for Marmee and the girls, and day after day said hopefully to herself, "I know I'll give my music sometime, if I'm good." There are many Beths in the world, shy and quiet, sitting in corners till needed, and living for others, so cheerfully that no one sees the sacrifices till the little cricket on the hearth stops chirping, and the sweet sunshiny presence vanishes, leaving silence and shadowy behind. If anybody had asked Amy what the greatest trial of her life was, she would have answered at once, "My nose." When she was a baby, Joe had accidentally dropped her into the coal hod, and Amy insisted that the fall had ruined her nose forever. It was not big nor red like poor Petria's. It was only rather flat, and all the pinching in the world could not give it an aristocratic point. No one minded it but herself, and it was doing its best to grow. But Amy felt deeply the want of a Grecian nose, and drew whole sheets of handsome ones to console her. Little Raphael, as her sisters called her, had a decided talent for drawing, and was never so happy as when copying flowers, designing fairies, or illustrating stories with queer specimens of art. Her teachers complained that instead of doing her sums, she covered her slate with animals. The blank pages of her atlas were used to copy maps on, and caricatures, the most ludicrous description, came fluttering out of all her books at unlucky moments. She got through her lessons well as she could, and managed to escape reprimands by being a model of deportment. She was a great favorite with her mates, being good-tempered and possessing the happy art of pleasing without effort. Her little airs and graces were much admired, so were her accomplishments, for besides her drawing, she could play 12 tunes, crochet, and read French without mispronouncing more than 2/3 of the words. She had a plaintive way of saying, "When Papa was rich, we did so and so," which was very touching, and her long words were considered perfectly elegant by the girls. Amy was in a fair way to be spoiled, for everyone petted her, and her small vanities and selfishness was growing nicely. One thing, however, rather quenched the vanities. She had to wear her cousin's clothes. Now Florence's mama hadn't a particle of taste, and Amy suffered deeply at having to wear a red inset with blue bonnets, unbecoming gowns, and fussy aprons that did not fit. Everything was good, well made, and little worn. But Amy's artistic eyes were much afflicted, especially this winter when her school dress was a dull purple and yellow dots and no trimming. My only comfort, she said to Meg, with tears in her eyes, is that Mother doesn't take tucks in my dresses whenever I'm naughty, as Maria Park's mother does. My dear, it's really dreadful, for sometimes she's so bad her frock is up to her knees. She can't come to school when I think of this degradation. I feel that I can bear even my flat nose and purple gown with yellow skyrockets on it.
Those Marines could use some help, Chief. Do what you do best. Keep your head down. There's 2 of us in here now, remember?
Meg was Amy's confidant and monitor, and by some strange attraction of the opposites, Joe was gentle with Beth. To Joe alone did the shy child tell her thoughts, and over her big harem-serum sister, Beth unconsciously exercised more influence than anyone in the family. The 2 older girls were a great deal to one another, but each took one of the younger sisters into her keeping and watched over her in her own way. Play mothers, they called it, and put the sisters in the places where discarded dolls with the maternal instinct of Little Women. Has anybody got anything to tell? It's been such a dismal day, I'm really dying for some amusement, said Meg as they sat stewing together that evening. I had a queer time with Aunt today, and as I got the best of it, I'll tell you about it, began Joe, who dearly loved to tell stories. I was reading with everlasting Belsham and droning away as I always do, for Aunt soon drops off, and then I take off some nice book and read like fury till she wakes up. I actually made myself sleepy, and before she began to nod, I gave such a gape that she asked me what I meant by opening my mouth wide enough to take the whole book in at once. I wish I could and be done with it, said I, trying not to be saucy. Then she gave me a long lecture on my sins and told me to sit and think them over while she just lost herself for a moment. She never finds herself very soon, so the minute her cap began to bob like a top-heavy dahlia, I whipped the Vicar of Wakefield out of my pocket and read away with one eye on him and one on Aunt. I just got to where they all tumbled into the water when I forgot to laugh. And laughed out loud. Aunt woke up, and being more good-natured after her nap, told me to read a bit and show what frivolous work I preferred to worry and instruct for Belsham. I did my very best, and she liked it. Though, she only said, I don't understand what it's all about. Go back and begin it, child. Back I went and made the primroses as interesting as ever I could. Once I was wicked enough to stop a thrilling place and say meekly, I'm afraid and tires you, ma'am. Shan't I stop now? She caught up her knitting, which had stopped out of her hands, gave me a sharp look through her specs, and said in her short way, Finish the chapter and don't be impertinent, miss. Did she own she like it? Asked Meg. Oh, bless you, no. But she let out belching rest. And when I ran back after my gloves this afternoon, there she was. So hard to the vicar that she didn't hear me laugh as I danced to dig in the hall. Because a good time coming. What a pleasant life she might have if only she chose. I don't envy her much in spite of her money. For after all, rich people have about as many worries as poor ones, I think, added Joe. That reminds me, said Meg, that I've got something to tell. It isn't funny, like Joe's story, but I thought about it a good deal as I came home. At the King's today, I found everybody in a flurry, and one of the children said that her oldest brother had done something dreadful, and Papa had sent him away. I heard Mrs. King crying and Mr. King talking very loud, and Grace and Ellen turned away their faces when they passed me, so I shouldn't see how red and swollen their eyes were. I didn't ask any questions, of course, but I felt so sorry for them and was rather glad I hadn't any wild brothers to do wicked things and disgrace the family. I think being disgraced in school is a great deal tryinger than anything bad boys can do, said Amy, shaking her head as if her experience of life had been a deep one. Susie Perkins came to school today with a lovely red carnelian ring. I wanted it dreadfully and wish I was with her with all my might. Well, she drew a picture of Mr. Davis with a monstrous nose and a hump, and the words, "Young ladies, my eye is upon you," coming out of his mouth in a balloon thing. We were laughing over it when all of a sudden his eye was on us, and he ordered Susie to bring up her slate. She was paralyzed with fright, but she went, and oh, what do you think he did? He took her by the ear. The ear! Just fancy how horrid, and led her to the recitation platform, and made her stand there half an hour holding the slate so everyone could see. Didn't the girls laugh at the picture? Asked Joe, who relished the scrape. Laugh, not one. They sat still as mice. And Susie cried quarts. I know she did. I didn't envy her then, for I felt the millions of carnelian rings would have made me happy after that. I never should have got over such an agonizing mortification. And Amy went on with the work in the proud consciousness of virtue and the successful utterness of 2 long words in a breath. I saw something I liked this morning, and I meant to tell it at dinner, but I forgot, said Beth, putting Joe's topsy-turvy basket in order as she talked. When I went to get some oysters for Hannah, Mr. Lawrence was in the fish shop, but he didn't see me, for I kept behind the fish barrel and he was busy with Mr. Cutter, the fishman. A poor woman came in with a pail and mop and asked Mr. Cutter if he would let her do some scrubbing for a bit, fish, because she hadn't dinner for her children and had been disappointed of a day's work. Mr. Cutter was in a hurry and said no, rather crossly. So she was going away looking hungry and sorry, when Mr. Lawrence hooked up a big fish with the crooked end of his cane and held it out to her. She was so glad and surprised she took it right into her arms and thanked him over and over. He told her to go along and cook it, and she hurried off so happy. Wasn't it good of him? Oh, she did look so funny, hugging the big slippery fish and hoping Mr. Lawrence's bed in heaven would be easy. When they had laughed at Beth's story, they asked him for one, and after a moment's thought, she said soberly, "As I sat cutting out blue flannel jackets today at the rooms, I felt very anxious about Father, and thought how lonely and helpless we should be if anything happened to him. It was not a wise thing to do, but I kept on worrying until an old man came in with an order for some clothes. He sat down near me, and I began to talk to him, for he looked poor and tired and anxious. 'Have you sons in the army?' I asked, for the note he brought was not to me. 'Yes, ma'am. I had 4, but 2 were killed. One is a prisoner, and I'm going to the other, who is very sick in Washington Hospital,' he answered quietly. 'You have done a great deal for your country, sir,' I said, feeling respect now instead of pity. 'Not a mite more than I ought, man. I'd go myself if I was any use. As I ain't, I give my boys and give 'em free.' He spoke so cheerfully, looked so sincere, and seemed so glad to give this it was all, that I was ashamed of myself. I'd given one man and thought it too much. While he gave four without grudging them, I had all my girls to comfort me at home, and his last son was waiting miles away to say goodbye to him, perhaps. I felt so rich, so happy thinking of my blessings that I made him a nice bundle, gave him some money, and thanked him heartily for the lesson he had taught me. Tell another story, Mother, one with a moral. One with a moral to it, like this. I like to think about them afterward, if they are real, not too preachy, said Joe after a minute's silence. Mrs. March smiled and began at once, for she had told stories to this little audience for many years, and knew how to please them. Once upon a time there was 4 girls who had enough to eat and drink and wear, and good many comforts and pleasures, kind friends and parents who loved them dearly, and yet they were not contented. These girls were anxious to be good and made many excellent resolutions, but they did not keep them very well, and were constantly saying, if only we had this, or if we could only do that, quite forgetting how much they had already had and how many things they actually could do. So they asked an old woman what spell they could use to make them happy, and she said, when you feel discontented, think over your blessings and be grateful. Being sensible girls, they decided to try her advice, and soon were surprised to see how well off they were. One discovered that money couldn't keep shame and sorrow out of rich people's houses. Another that though she was poor, she was a great deal happier with her youth, health, and good spirits than a certain fretful, feeble old lady who couldn't enjoy her comforts. A third that, disagreeable as it was to help get dinner, it was harder still to get begging for it, and the fourth that even a carnelian rings were not so valuable as good behavior. So they agreed to stop complaining, to enjoy the blessings already possessed, and try to deserve them, lest they should be taken away entirely instead of increased. And I believe they were never disappointed or sorry that they took the old woman's advice. Now, Marmee, that is very cunning of you to turn our own stories against us and give us a sermon instead of a romance, cried Meg. I like that kind of sermon. It's the sort of father used to tell us, said Beth, thoughtfully putting the needles straight on Joe's cushion. I don't complain near as much as the others do, and I shall be more careful than ever now, for I've had warnings from Susie's downfall, said Amy morally. We needed that lesson, and we won't forget it. If we do so, you just say to us, as old Chloe did in Uncle Tom, tink ob your marcies, chillin', tink ob your marcies, added Joe, who could not for the life of her help getting a morsel of fun out of the little sermon, though she took it to heart as much as any of them. So if you notice, ladies, the difference between my room and outside my room is there's a big wire being run through my room, and there's not a big wire being run outside of my room, which means you're hacking my room. And I just told you if you didn't get off there, you'd be killed. And you're not hacking any kind of room. I'm not dealing with false statements here, officers, which is what you have done. And no, I'm not going to sit here on a maybe. You're not standing over me, period. I think is what I'm pointing out here. It's period. You're that big of a problem. Because you're a fraud and you're a paranoid schizophrenic is what you are if you're sitting there standing over me like that. So I have a weapon that you cannot see and there's nothing you can do about it. I would vacate the building. And I mean entirely. I can take pictures, you can pay for them. That's as far as you can go. So let's be clear here, ladies. You can tell Papa that you're not getting in the room unless you're a woman. Even then, you're not hacking anybody. You're not using any kind of technology in that room. Future, past, present. Chapter 5. Being neighborly. What in the world, Little Women? What in the world are you doing? What in the world are you going to do now, Joe? Asked Meg one snowy afternoon as her sister came tramping through the hall in rubber boots, old sack and hood, and with a broom in one hand and a shovel in the other. Going out for exercise, answered Joe with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. I should think 2 long walks this morning should have been enough. It's cold and dull out, and I advise you to stay warm and dry by the fire. As I do, said Meg with a shiver. Get off that microphone. Get off the microphone or you will be killed. On his V engines. That's how they're doing it. I need that gone. That's not my agenda. Get off the road. Germany, I'm not kidding. By no means are you welcome here. By no means are you welcome here. You're stupid. You're at give me the money and I'll leave, and I will go as I please. Or you can shut up and you can rot and burn forever. I don't really care. Either way, it's going to be my way. Never take advice. Can't keep still all day, and not being a pussycat, I don't like to doze by the fire. I like adventures, and I'm going to find some. Meg went back to toast her feet and read Ivanhoe, and Joe began to dig paths with great energy. The snow was light, and with her broom she soon swept the path all around the garden. For Beth to walk in when the sun came out and the invalid dolls needed air. Now, the garden separated the Marches' house from that of Mr. Lawrence. Both stood in a suburb of the city which was still country-like, with groves and lawns, large gardens and quiet streets, a low hedge part of the 2 estates. On one side was an old brown house looking rather bare and shabby, robbed of the vines that in summer covered its walls and the flowers which then surrounded it. On the other side was a stately stone mansion, plainly betokening every sort of comfort and luxury, from the big coach house and well-kept grounds to the conservatory and the glimpses of lovely things one caught between the rich curtains. Yet it seemed a lonely, lifeless sort of house, for no children flocked on the lawns, no motherly face ever smiled at the windows, and few people went in and out except the old gentleman and his grandson. To Joe's lively fancy, this fine house seemed a kind of enchanted palace, full of splendors and delights, which no one enjoyed. She had long wanted to behold these hidden glories and to know the Lawrence boy, who looks as if he would like to be known if he only knew how to begin. Since the party she had been more eager than ever and had planned many ways of making friends with him, but he had not been seen lately, and Joe began to think he had gone away, when she had one day spied a brown face in an upper window, looking wistfully down into their garden where Beth and Amy were snowballing one another. That boy is suffering for society and fun, she said to herself. His grandpa does not know what's good for him and keeps him shut up all alone. He needs a party of jolly boys to play with, or somebody young and lively. I've a great mind to go over and tell the old gentleman so. The idea amused Joe, who liked to do daring things and was always scandalized and nagged by her queer performances. The plan of going over was not forgotten, and when the snowy afternoon came, Joe resolved to try what could be done. She saw Mr. Lawrence drive off and then sallied out to dig her way, down to the hedge where she paused and took a survey. All quiet curtains down at the lower windows. Servants out of sight and nothing human visible, but a curly black head leaning on a thin hand at the upper window. There he is, thought Joe. Poor boy, all alone and sick and dismal day. It's a shame. I'll toss up a snowball and make him look out, and then say a kind word to him. Up went a handful of soft snow, and the head turned at once, showing a face which lost its light, listless look in a minute, as the big eyes ever brightened and the mouth began to smile. Joe nodded and laughed and flourished her broom as she called out, "How do you do? Are you sick?" Laurie opened the window and croaked out as hoarsely as a raven. "Better, thank you. I've had a bad cold and been shut up a week." "I'm sorry. What do you amuse yourself with?" "Nothing. It's the dullest tombs up here." "Don't you read?" "Not much. They won't let me." "Can somebody read to you?" "Grandpa does sometimes, but my books don't interest him, and I hate to ask the brook all the time." "Have someone come and seen you then?" "There isn't anyone I'd like to see. Boys make such a row and my head is weak." "Isn't there some nice girl who'd read and amuse you?" "Girls are quiet and like to play nurse." "Don't know any." "Don't know us," began Joe, then laughed and stopped. "So I do. Will you come, please?" cried Laurie. "I'm not quiet and nice, but I'll come. If Mother will let me, I'll go ask her. Shut the window like a good boy, and I'll wait till I come." With that, Joel shouldered her broom and marched into the house, wondering what they would all say to her. Laurie was in a flutter of excitement at the idea of having company and flew about to get ready for us. As Mrs. March said, he was a little gentleman. "The base, get off!" and did honor to the coming guests by brushing his curly pate. Putting on a flush collar and trying to tidy up the room, which in spite of half a dozen servants was anything but neat. Presently there came a loud ring and a decided voice, asking for Mr. Laurie, and a surprised-looking servant came running up to announce the young lady. "All right, show her up. It's Miss Joe," said Laurie, going to the door of the parlor to meet Joe, who appeared looking rosy and quite at her ease, with a covered dish in one hand, Beth's 3 kittens in the other. "Here I am, bag and baggage," she said briskly. "Mother sent her love and was glad if I could do anything for you. Meg wanted me to bring some for Blanche Mange. She makes it very nicely, and Beth thought her cats would be comforting. I knew you'd laugh at them, but I couldn't refuse. She was so anxious to do something." It so happened that Beth's funny loan was just the thing, for in laughing over the kits, Laurie forgot his bashfulness and grew sociable at once. "That looks too pretty to eat," he said, smiling with pleasure, as Joe uncovered the dish and showed the Blanche Mange, surrounded by a garland of green leaves and the scarlet flowers of Amy's pet geranium. "It isn't anything, only they all felt kindly and wanted to show it. Tell the girl to put it away for your tea. It's so simple that you can eat it, and being soft, it will slip down without hurting your sore throat. What a cozy room this is." "It might be if you kept nice, but the maids are lazy, and I don't know how to make them mind. It worries me, though." "I'll write it up in 2 minutes, for it only needs half the hearth brushed. So, and the things made straight on the mantelpiece. So, and the books put here, and the bottles there, and your sofa turned from the light, and the pillows plumped up a bit. Now then, you're fixed." And so he was, for as she laughed and talked, Joe had whisked things into place and given quite a different air to the room. "Get off Pizza Hut." "You're latching on to Pizza Hut. Get off Pizza Hut."
The burn!
"All the way. Entirely, I will know." "On the phone. Get off of it." Laurie watched her in respectful silence, and when she beckoned him to his sofa, he sat down with a sigh of satisfaction, saying gratefully, "How kind you are. Yes, what is wanted? Now, please take the big chair and let me do something to amuse my company." "No, I came to amuse you. Shall I read aloud?" And Joe looked affectionately toward some inviting books nearby. "Thank you, I've read all those, and if you don't mind, I'd rather talk," answered Laurie. "Not a bit. I'll talk all day if you'll only set me going. Beth says I never know when to stop." "Is Beth the rosy one, who stays at home a good deal and sometimes goes out with a little basket?" asked Laurie with interest. "Yeah, that's Beth. She's my girl, and a regular good one she is, too." "The pretty one is Meg, and the curly-haired one is Amy, I believe?" "How did you find that out?" Laurie colored up, but answered frankly, "Why, you see, I often hear you calling to one another, and when I'm alone up here, I can't help looking over at your house, and you always seem to be having such good times. I beg your pardon for being so rude, but sometimes you forget to put down the curtain at the window where the flowers are. And when the lamps are lighted, it's like looking at a picture to see the fire, and you're all around the table with your mother. Her face is right opposite it, and it looks so sweet behind the flowers, I can't help watching it. I haven't got any mother, you know, and Laurie poked the fire to hide a little twitching of lips that he could not control.
Quickly, get aboard before it launches.
The solitary, hungry look in his eyes went straight to Joe's warm heart. She had been so simply taught that there was no nonsense in her head, and at 15 she was as innocent and frank as any child. Laurie was sick and lonely and feeling how rich she was in home and happiness. She gladly tried to share it with him. Her face was very friendly and her sharp voice unusually gentle as she said,
Very good time to leave.
"We'll never draw that curtain anymore, and I give you leave to look as much as you like. I just wish, though, instead of peeping, you'd come over and see us. Mother is so splendid, she'd do you heaps of good, and Beth would sing to you if I begged her to, and Amy would dance. Meg and I would make you laugh over our funny stage properties, and we'd have jolly times. Wouldn't your grandpa let you?" "I think he would if your mother asked him. He's very kind, though he does not look so, and he lets me do what I like, pretty much, and only he's afraid I might be a bother to strangers," began Laurie, brightening more and more. "We are not strangers, we are neighbors, and you needn't think you'd be a brother. We want to know you, and I've been trying to do it this ever so long. We haven't been here a great while, you know, but we have got acquainted with all our neighbors but you. You see, Grandpa lives among his books and doesn't mind much what happens outside. Mr. Brooke, my tutor, doesn't stay here, you know, and I have no one to go about with me, so I just stop at home and get on as I can. That's bad. You ought to make an effort and go visiting everywhere you are asked. Then you'll have plenty of friends and pleasant places to go to. Never mind being bashful, it won't last long if you keep going." I'm waiting. Laurie turned red again, but wasn't offended at being accused of bashfulness, for there was so much goodwill in Joe it was impossible to take her blunt speeches as kindly as they were meant. "Do you like your school?" asked the boy, changing the subject after a little pause, during which he stared at the fire, and Joe looked about her, well pleased. "Don't go to school. I'm a businessman, girl. I go to wait on my great aunt, and a dear cross old soul she is, too," answered Joe. Laurie opened his mouth to ask another question, but remembering just in time that it wasn't manners to make too many inquiries into people's affairs, he shut it again and looked uncomfortable.
Chief, can you hear me?
Joe liked his good breeding and didn't mind having a laugh at Aunt March, so she gave him a lively description of the fidgety old lady, her fat poodle, the parrots that talked Spanish at the library where she revealed. Laurie enjoyed that immensely, and when she told about the prim old gentleman who came once to woo Aunt March, and in the middle of a fine speech, how Poll had tweaked his wig off his great dismay, the boy lay back and laughed till the tears ran down his cheeks, and a maid popped her head in to see what was the matter. "Oh. Oops. That does me no end of good. Tell on, please," he said, taking his face out of the sofa cushion, red and shining with merriment. Much elated with her success, Joe did tell on all about their plays and plans, their hopes and fears for father, and the most interesting events of the little world in which the sisters lived. Then they got to talking books, and to Joe's delight she found that Laurie loved them as well as she did, and had read even more than herself. "If you like them so much, come down and see ours. Grandfather's out, so you needn't be afraid." And Laurie getting up. "I'm not afraid of anything," returned Joe, with a toss of the head. "I don't believe you are," exclaimed the boy, looking at her with much admiration, though he privately thought she would have good reason to be a trifle afraid of the old gentleman if she met him in some of his moods. The atmosphere of the whole house being summer-like, Laurie led the way from room to room, letting Joe stop to examine whatever struck her fancy. And so at last they came to the library, where she clapped her hands and pranced, as she always did when especially delighted. It was lined with books, and there was pictures and statues and distracting little cabinets full of coins and curiosities, and sleepy, hollow chairs, and queer tables and bronzes, and best of all, a great open fireplace with quaint tiles all around it. What she's talking about, so what you're doing is, whenever they go to the bathroom, they're gripping onto their sphincters and then going door to door, and they can basically ring you out They can squeeze you out, is what they're doing. With the toilets. Why would they be doing that, Lori? On camera here, I think she's calling you out. As a whole, as a group. Okay, so here's the problem I'm having is they keep arguing with me. On camera. Art. Okay, I see. That's a problem. It's a huge problem. And you're going to jail for it. Which I can see what's going on there. I'm good. I have everything on camera. You're a bitch. Something I noticed whenever the mother comes home is the toilets.
I'm reading a lifeboat.
They're casting a grip from toilet to toilet, person to person. So like, if someone sits in a toilet that's small for them, there's something underground, there's pressure there. In the toilet. And because there's pressure, they can grab it. Which they are grabbing it. Okay, on camera, you are not escaping me. And these little women. What richness, sighed Joe, sinking to the depth of a valor chair and gazing about her with an air of intense satisfaction. Theodore Lawrence, you ought to be the happiest boy in the world, she added impressively. I, fellow, can't live on books, said Laurie, shaking his head as he perched on a table opposite. Before he could say more, a bell rang, and Joe flew up, exclaiming with alarm, Mercy me, if you're Grandpa. Well, what if it is? You are not afraid of anything, you know, returned the boy, looking wicked. I think I'm a little bit afraid of him, and I don't know why I should be. Marmee said I might come, and I don't think you are any of the worse for it, said Joe, composing herself, though she kept her eyes on the door. I'm a great deal better for it, and ever so much obliged. I'm only afraid you are very tired of talking to me. I was so pleasant. Ooh, they backed off real quick, didn't they? Missouri, I'm not backing off. The property you owe me today, 4 fucking days ago. So I can leave away from hostile motherfuckers, or I can drop bombs. I'm not going to allow that to continue. You're using the device there, and you just removed it. The radio. It was so pleasant, I couldn't bear to stop, and Laurie gratefully. The doctor to see you, sir, and the maid beckoned as she spoke. Would you mind if I left you for a minute? I suppose I must see him, said Laurie. Don't mind me, I'm happy as a cricket here, answered Joe. Laurie went away, and his guest amused herself in her own way. She was standing before a fine portrait of the old gentleman when the door opened again, and without turning, she said decidedly, I'm sure now that I shouldn't be afraid of him, for he's got kind eyes. Though his mouth is grim, and he looks as if he had a tremendous will of his own. He isn't as handsome as my grandfather, but I like him. Thank you, ma'am, said a gruff voice behind her, and there to her great dismay stood Mr. Lawrence. Poor Jo blushed till she couldn't blush any redder, and her heart began to beat uncomfortably fast as she thought what she had said. For a minute a wild desire to run away possessed her, but that was cowardly, and the girls would laugh at her. So she resolved to stay and get out of this scrape as she could. A second look showed her that the living eyes under the bushy eyebrows were kinder even than the pointed ones, and there was a sly twinkle in them, which lessened her fear a good deal. The gruff voice was gruffer than ever, and as the old gentleman said abruptly, after the dreadful pause, So you're not afraid of me, hey? Not much, sir. And you don't mind me as handsome as your grandfather? Not quite, sir. And I've got a tremendous will, have I? I only said I thought so. But you like me in spite of it? Yes, I do, sir. That answer pleased the old gentleman. He gave a short laugh, shook hands with her, and putting his finger under her chin, turned up her face, examined it gravely, and let it go, saying with a nod, You've got your grandfather's spirit, if you haven't his face. He was a fine man, my dear, but what is better, he was a brave and honest one, and I was proud to be his friend. Thank you, sir, and Joe was quite comfortable after that, words suited her exactly. What have you been doing to this boy of mine? Hey? Was the next question, sharply put. Only trying to be neighborly, sir, and Joel told how her visit came about. You think he needs cheering up a bit, do you? Yes, sir, he seems a little lonely, and young folk would do him good, perhaps. We're only girls, but we should be glad to help if we could. Well, we don't forget the splendid Christmas present she sent us, said Joe eagerly. Tut, tut, tut. That was the boy's affair. How is the poor woman? Doing nicely, sir, and off went Joe, talking very fast, as she told all about the Hummels, and whom her mother had interested richer friends than they were. Just her father's way of doing good. I shall come and see your mother some fine day. Tell her so. There's the tea bell. We have it early on the boy's account. No, you don't. Come down and go on being neighborly. At all, you do not. You are going to pay for that. If you'd like to have me, sir. Shouldn't ask you if I didn't. And Mr. Lawrence offered her his arm in old-fashioned courtesy. What would Meg say to this? Thought Joe as she was marched away, while her eyes danced with fun as she imagined herself telling the story at home. Hey, why, what the dickens has come to the fellow? Said the old gentleman, as Laurie came running downstairs, brought up with a start of surprise at the astounding sight of Joe arm in arm with his redoubtable grandfather. I didn't know you'd come, sir, he began as Joe gave him a triumphant little glance. That's evident, but by the way you racket downstairs. Come to your tea, sir, and behave like a gentleman. And having pulled the boy's hair by way of a caress, Mr. Lawrence walked on, while Laurie went through a series of comic evolutions behind the backs, which nearly produced an explosion of laughter from Joe. The old gentleman did not say much as he drank his 4 cups of tea, but he watched the young people who soon chatted away like old friends, and the change in his grandson did not escape him. There was color, light, and life in the boy's face now. Vivacity in the manner and genuine merriment in his laugh. She's right, the lad is lonely. I'll see what these little girls can do for them, thought Mr. Lawrence as he looked and listened. He liked Joe, for her odd, blunt ways suited him, and she seemed to understand the boy almost as well as she had been one herself. If the Lawrences had been what Joe called prim and poky, she would not have got on at all, for such people always made her shy and awkward. But finding them free and easy, she was so herself and made a good impression. Robert. When they rose, she proposed to go, but Laurie said he had something more to show her, and took her away to the conservatory, which had been lighted for the benefit. It seemed quite fairy-like to Joe as she went up and down the walks, enjoying the blooming walls on either side, the soft light and damp sweet air, and the wonderful vines and trees that hung about her, while her new friend cut the finest flowers till his hands were full. Then he tied them up, saying with a happy look Joe liked to see, "Please give these to your mother and tell her I like the medicine she sent me very much." Wagner! It's a problem! We're not doing business with that. Get out. It's my property. Vacate the premises immediately or I will kill you. Russia, I'm not kidding. Get out. Germany, whatever the fuck you are. Get out. Cease and desist now. You are not welcome here. I will push you out. I promise you I will force you out. So again, you see the problem I'm having with the fraud here on camera, which I guess they didn't expect. You see the problem I'm having. I need my own business. The entitlements I'm owed. Come louder. We're not arguing. Get him out. I will force it on you. The property that I am entitled to so I can get away from the fraud, which is what you're doing. So here's what we're going to do with the federal agent involved with this store over here on codes. And he is under arrest. If you don't comply with me, you will be killed. I need the entitlements that I'm entitled to with certificates involved so I can move forward away from the fraud. He's under arrest. Whoever's attached to that, you are going to jail for it.
Save yourself!
No, it's period. You made false statements, period. And on top of that, you were raping me with that goddamn device you have. You are going to jail for it. Congress, I'm not asking you. So let's get on it now. I can open fire, or we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. He's not getting out of it. She is not getting out of it. The entitlements. Before I continue, Robert, thank you for clarifying. There's a picture that I saw of you. I'm gonna have to go back and look so I can see the girls, exactly what they look like. I've only seen Tilly that I remember. I'm pretty sure Helen's there too as well. She can stay. They found Mr. Lawrence standing before the fire in the great drawing room, but Joe's attention was entirely absorbed by grand piano, which stood open. Do you play? She asked, turning to Lori with a respectful expression. Sometimes, he answered modestly. Please do now. I want to hear it so I can tell Beth. Won't you first? Which one do you want? Don't know how. Too stupid to learn, but I love music dearly. So Lori played and Joe listened, with her nose luxuriously buried in heliotrope and tea roses. Her respect and regard for the Lawrence boy increased very much, for he played remarkably well and put on my airs. She wished Beth could hear him, but she did not say so. Only praised him till he was quite abashed, and his grandfather came to his rescue. Throwing a fit's not going to help you, and I will kill you. That will do. That will do, young lady. Too many sugar plums are too good for him. Are not good for him. His music isn't bad, but I hope he will do as well as more important things going. Well, I'm much obliged to you, and I hope you'll come again. My respects to you, Mother. Good night, Dr. Joe. Yeah, you guys have been caught, and I know you've been caught. So here's the problem I'm having with this assault in the private of my home, is you say this and that and feed this information to a fraud. I would have no doubt that they're co-conspirators in that. Seeing as you're doing it the way that you're doing it, and torturing me. Which is what you are doing. No, we are not involved with nigger. Let me be clear here, the nigger is. Get off my property. So on camera here, every step of the way, every word spoken, every movement, every motion, every light refracted my way. You are in deep shit, and I'm not backing off. The entitlements that you owe me. No, you're not going to drug your way out of this, which is what you're trying to do. That's unfortunate that you put me in that situation. And you did it, nobody else. So this is what we're going to do over here. We're going to make submissions to off the congressional conduct. We're going to make submissions to the frauds, because there is absolutely no doubt that one of you is co-conspirating with these motherfuckers out here torturing this man in the private of his home while he's working. He shook hands kindly, but looked as if something did not please him. When they got into the hall, Joe asked Lori if she had had something amiss. He shook his head. No, it was me. He doesn't like to hear me play. Why not? I'll tell you someday. John is going home, so I can't. Mozart? No need of that. I'm not a young lady. And it's only a step. Take care of yourself, won't you? Yes. But you will come again, I hope. If you promise to come and see after all, you are well. I will. Good night, Lori. Good night, Joe. Good night. When all the afternoon adventures had been told, the family felt inclined to go visiting in a body, for each found something very attractive in the big house on the other side of the hedge. Mrs. March wanted to talk of her father with the old man who had not forgotten him. Meg longed to walk in the conservatory. Beth sighed for the grand piano, and Amy was eager to see the fine pictures and statues. Mother! Why did Mr. Lawrence like to have Lori play? Asked Joe, who was of an inquiring disposition. No, you really shocked me. I am not sure, but I think it's because his son. Lori's father married an Italian lady. If you notice the sound in the other room, that's what shocked me. I am not sure, but I think it was because his son. Lori's father married an Italian lady, a musician, which displeased the old man, which was very proud. The lady was good and lovely and accomplished, but he did not like her and never saw his son after he married. They both died when Lori was a little child, and then his grandfather took him home. I fancy the boy, who was born in Italy, is not very strong, and the old man is afraid of losing him, which makes him so careful. Lori comes naturally by his love of music, for he is like his mother, and I dare say his grandfather fears that he may want to be a musician. At any rate, his skill reminds him of the women he did not like, and so he glowered, as Joe said. Dear me, how romantic, exclaimed Meg. How silly, said Joe. Let him be a musician if he wants to, and not plague his life out sending him to college when he hates to go. That's why he has such a handsome black eyes and pretty manners, I suppose. Italians are always nice, said Meg, who was a little sentimental. What do you know about his eyes and his manners? You never spoke to him hardly, cried Joe, who was not sentimental. I saw him at the party, and what you tell shows that he knows how to behave. That was a nice little speech about the medicine Mother sent him. He meant the Blantz mage, I suppose. How stupid you are, child! He meant you, of course. Did he? And Joe opened her eyes as if it had never occurred to her before. I never saw such a girl. You don't know a compliment when you get it, said Meg, with the air of a young lady who knew all about the matter. I think they are great nonsense, and I'll thank you, not to be silly and spoil my fun. Loy's a nice boy, and I like him, and I won't have any sentimental stuff about compliments and such rubbish. We'll all be good to him because he hasn't got any mother, and he may come over and see us. Mayn't he, Marmee? Yes, Joe. Your little friend is very welcome, and I hope Meg will remember that children should be children as long as they can. I don't call myself a child, and I'm not in my teens yet, observed Amy. What do you say, Beth? I was thinking about our Pilgrim's Progress, answered Beth, who had not heard a word. How we got out of the slough and through the wicket gate by resolving to be good, and up the steep hill by trying, and that maybe the house over here full of splendid things is going to be our palace beautiful. We have got to get by the lions first, said Joe, as if she rather liked the prospect.